positions of hopelessness and helplessness. The government gives them the drugs, builds bigger prisons, passes a 3-strike law, and then wants us to sing God Bless America. No, no, no. Not God Bless America. God damn America. That's in the Bible for killing innocent people. God damn America for treating us citizens as less than human.
Okay, Italian voice. I'm not gonna do the Barrett voice because it is racist, but remember the beginning of Final Fantasy VII when he says, "There's no getting off of this train." The train, it's a great metaphor about the climate change thing that the game is a metaphor for and all that crap. There's no getting off of this train. It's Amtrak.
Hey, here's my Barrett impression. I'm Barrett. Shit.
Yeah. So this is I know we talked about him on the Final Fantasy episode. This is a African American character.
Yes.
He's a large man with a machine gun for a hand, and he just loves his daughter so much. And his name is Barrett.
Making passionate speeches about how we have to save the planet, which is like a train that you can't get off of once it starts moving. And that's what that video game is all about. Also, Tifa is there. Tifa? How do we pronounce her name? I don't know. But the train is it's Amtrak Joe's train. We can't get off of Amtrak Joe's train. We'll talk about him later. We're on his train for the next 4 years.
Regulated by Pete Buttigieg.
Also, yeah, driven by a teenager because of Pete Buttigieg's new practices. And it's going through a tunnel. And I can't figure out how to segue these two things. Let's talk about this thing that happened in the Italian Senate. Someone did a Max Headroom thing where they hacked in to the video feed of the Italian Senate, and they played like CGI hentai porn of Tifa Lockhart from Final Fantasy, from the Avalanche eco-terrorist crew, getting fucked for like 30 seconds.
By what we can assume was Cloud Strife.
You can't see his head is the thing.
But I can spot the middle of him anywhere, and that was Cloud Strife.
That was a soldier first class torso.
And was the video from the actual game, a sex scene from the game, or something a fan made?
There are no sex scenes in the game.
You're not allowed to fucking game.
So this is a deviant art sort of
somebody makes these. They actually got a lot of traffic from this, but essentially what happened is the Italian government was doing a digital proceeding where they were introducing Nobel Prize winner of physics Giorgio Parisi, and someone hacked in and shared their screen where Tifa is just, folks, she's just getting railed. There's no other way to say it. And the materia is flying out of her. And then they try to turn it off, but it takes them like a full minute of just Italians screaming.
What if it was...
you can watch the whole thing online.
One of those Michael Parenti lectures, but in the background is just, Eris and the Red 13, the dog animal going at it. That's a good way to radicalize the kids. They put Parenti on those choking victim albums, put the kids, what are they up to these days? Apparently stuff like this. This is a good way to get these ideas out into the world. I have a question about this, though. I saw it. How did somebody go, that's Tifa? Because without any...
It doesn't look like Tifa.
Well, she just looks, without like the outfit that she's known for and stuff, and without being able to see the guy's head, to me, I'd have guessed that it was that specific character. I'd just been like, oh, that's a CGI Japanese woman.
Well, let me tell you, Jake, real fans can spot Tifa Lockhart anywhere she appears, whether it's on the Italian government or on the train fighting armed soldiers. Can I just say the state of hentai has changed so much from when I was a child. I no longer even recognize it. These girls no longer look like drawings. They look like Gumby has come to life and is exploring his or her body in front of me.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Maybe this is how you can tell. No, damn it. Sorry.
Did you just start playing it?
Just YouTube
the video?
throws an ad. She has a theme song. All the characters in Final Fantasy have a theme song, right? So if you're watching hentai and this song starts playing, that means it's Tifa, and you better pay your respects.
This is her theme song.
Yeah, it's so sad.
Why is hers sad? She's like the spunky one.
But on the inside, she's sad.
Because she has a past with Cloud at the Mount Nipple place.
I guess it is sad because she loves Cloud so much, and Cloud is fully in love with this other woman the entire time.
And so to be clear, this was sort of a Zoom type situation. So they not only heard it, but they saw it. Is that correct?
Oh, they saw it.
Okay. Yeah.
We all saw it. And then the best part of it is so they finally like unhack the meeting, and then this like physicist just gives a speech like nothing happened.
The funny part of it is that because I assumed at first, as does happen from time to time in the world, someone whose job it was to swing the different video around up there, maybe like accidentally clicked a wrong window, and then they played the porn that they had been watching the night before or something on their computer. Oh my God, how humiliating, right? But this was a true Max Headroom hack thing. It turns out they didn't know how to get it taken down. And it also played on like Italian TV and shit. And over it, they don't know who it is, but they just heard, you can hear this person in the clip. And I don't know Italian, so the context is very bizarre to me, but they're just yelling like the word translates pretty literally. It's just like, El sex offendo. It's just yelling about a sex offender in Spanish.
Italy is a strange place because on TV, I believe, and this is true of Europe in general, commercials have full frontal nudity. Breasts are displayed for everyone to see. There's like, very graphic sex. However, in Italy, it's also like a crime to say "Porca Dio," which means God is a pig. So they have like strange, just arbitrary standards with decency. So I don't know how they reacted to this. Maybe people were just fine with it, because sex is everywhere.
Crazy. I mean, I've been following a Spanish KFC account, and it has like the check mark. It's the official account of KFC in some part of Spain. And it's insane. It just shit posts. Like, it shared a Nazi meme the other day. Not like it was saying a Nazi thing really, but the artist, there's a specific web comic artist who makes cringe web comics who is a Nazi that people have tracked down and shit. And like, it's bananas, dude. It looks like a fucking teenager is running it.
And
I don't know.
And that sold chicken in some way?
I guess so. Yeah.
It increased the sales of Kentucky Fried Chicken. Folks, it's Pod Damn America for another week.
Hello, Jake Flores here.
Yeah, pathetic.
And there's Ali here.
You can do this act. I'm a Barrett from Avalanche. See, this is it's not offensive because
I love my daughter, but I kill you if you touch her.
My arm a Gatling gun like a turn of the century anarchist.
Actually,
asterisk exclamation point at symbol question mark.
I don't know if I should say this. I feel like I may have probably said this at some point. I dated an Italian anarchist, and
you said it.
Okay, fine. She claimed that she should be able to use the N-word, or that it's different because she's not American. So it's I can't say it, but she can.
She's using it as an ally.
Yeah. Because of America, I guess, was what she was going for.
The word to her is.
I hope she's listening right now.
We're not in touch, so I kind of doubt it. But Italy, strange place. Yeah, I would love to go.
Yeah. Speaking of Italy, I'm just kidding. I have no idea how to segue this into one of these other things. How about this blunt guy?
Oh, yeah, that's so true.
Mississippi is in... Oh, no, wait. Was it Louisiana?
Louisiana
is in many ways the Italy of America.
It's shaped
I've
like
always said that.
No, they're both shaped like boots. That's what Two Boots Pizza is.
Right.
Cajun
style pizza, which you would think would never work, and arguably it doesn't, but people still eat there.
That's why they have the Bayou Beast. That's one of the pizzas you can get, the Bayou Beast.
Shrimp on a pizza? Are you out of your damn mind?
Poor boy pizza. It also, similar in that there's a wide sort of variance when it comes to sexual attitudes, right? Because there's very many conservative parts of Louisiana and Italy, and then other parts where it's just hey-o all the time. Letting loose, getting raw.
Cajun voice. Hey-o.
Oh, what is this guy's name? Gary Chambers?
I believe so, yeah.
Released a campaign ad to run for Senate there. Where he's just smoking. He's like sitting in a cool chair, like in Atlanta, out in the middle of nowhere, like the TV show Atlanta, when they sit on that couch, smoking a blunt. And like his campaign made sure to verify that was a real blunt he's smoking, like in that video, and made a statement in the video about how marijuana should be legal and the war on drugs is racist and all this cool radical stuff. I have not looked into his politics and his platforms. I don't want to go off and do an official PDA endorsement for our 10 listeners in Louisiana or whatever, but look into it. I don't know. DSA down there seems to have nice things to say about him. Pretty cool.
And you know what? Honestly, if there's bad things about him, just don't tell us about it, because it's nice to just have like a blunt commercial and that's it for the week.
It was like fucking cool.
Can we not just have like a blunt commercial and enjoy it?
Yeah.
And it's I think a good way to get his name out there, right? Obviously, I think mission accomplished there. And really is maybe the only bipartisan issue in the year 2022. Democrats, Republicans, both smoke weed or agree that people should be able to smoke weed. In 2012, the ballot referendum legalizing recreational marijuana got more votes than Obama in a state he won. So I think that this is a shrewd political move.
It's crazy. It is a bipartisan take at this point, and yet so is pro-police shit. And the same voters seem to be somehow pressing those two buttons at the same time and just this is normal. These things don't contradict each other, right? Because that's Louisiana is one of those places where the war on drugs is fucking bad, dude.
Also, when people think about crime, they're not really concerned about people smoking weed. I mean, grandmas and shit are fucking party poopers, but for the most part, they're not that they're concerned about shooting and, violence and stuff and getting mugged and all that. Not somebody smoking a blunt. That's not a threat to anybody, you know, except maybe your lungs. I think they are two kind of separate things in a way, but by legalizing marijuana,
old shitty people used to think weed led to guns and shit, right. And you lose your mind, and then somehow there just was a very rapid cultural shift where weed people are old people are I tried brownies now and I like it. I think it's a good idea.
I went to the hospital, but they said I didn't need to.
It felt like I pissed my pants for a while, but then I checked and they were dry, and it's okay now. You ever have that happen when you were too
high?
We've all had it happen.
It's weird because it is it really has ebbed and flowed. Of course, the original marijuana laws were very racist and explicitly about jazz musicians and that stuff. And then towards the 70s, it was actually became sort of popular to talk about decriminalization because white kids were getting arrested for it. So their parents were like, I don't want this to happen to my son. And then, Nixon kicked it in overdrive again. And here we are. It's the fucking Gramsci quote about the new world has yet to begin, but the old one is still is dead. And we have a fucking president who doesn't even want to legalize it, which he basically has the authority to do. And this would be such a winner. Nobody wants people going to jail.
Well, he can't legalize it because it would be the only popular thing he's done, and he's on a roll.
Yeah. It's like not only is it a progressive, it's like a progressive agenda item, one of the only ones that does not interfere with capital. Like, it's good for capitalism for weed to be legal, right?
Yeah. I know that we've covered this before, and even things that Biden has done that I have liked, like leaving Afghanistan, was unpopular. I think there is a pattern here emerging of the brain of the modern Democratic Party truly believes to be responsible, they have to only do unpopular things because they have so much venom in them for the American citizen. They clearly don't think they know what's good for themselves.
Right. Well, it goes back to
feed you your gruel.
You ever hear that story about how Hunter Thompson wanted to try to dose Nixon with LSD, and I think he had like a plan to do it, but he never got away with it. So we need to get weed ice cream into Joe Biden. That'll do it. He has a fun day. He doesn't realize why he's got the munchies, man. You ever just pick up
immediately. What's gonna happen?
Yeah, nothing wrong with that though.
I mean, if somebody who works in the White House told me that they have done that already, then I would believe them and would just haven't noticed because he's just regularly senile.
That's why Kamala can't talk normal, because she's just blazing it and listening to lo-fi beats in the White House and saying every day is, and we are doing every day, and it's what you do.
We have chill beats, and we are studying to them.
Right, just like she did in college with her still living friend Tupac Shakur.
Me and Joe get fucked up and listening to dead rappers who are still alive.
Yeah.
Well, what are we talking about today?
Well, on that tip of executive action that the president could take, and ranking of his time in office so far, which sorry to say does not get stellar marks from the boys at PDA.
F minus.
There are a lot of promises that this man made when he was running for president and when Harris became his nominee for vice president. This just resurfaced. A friend of ours, David Citrick, posted this on Twitter. They still have their campaign platform up, the promises that they were making in 2020. And it's frankly embarrassing. They wanted to fix Trump's testing and tracing fiasco to ensure all Americans have access to regular, reliable, and free testing. Double the number of drive-through testing sites. Invest in next-generation testing, including at-home tests and instant tests, so we can scale up our testing capacity by orders of magnitude.
You can kiss Dr. Jill Biden. It's cool, man. Give it a try.
Do you think they have boinked in the White House yet?
It would be disrespectful.
For them to not?
No, they shouldn't boink in the White House, man. That's not what it's about, man. It's a no boink zone in there.
That's why Clinton never did vaginal insertion.
It's true. Because of the no boink clause.
Yeah. I can't boink, I'm sorry.
I can't boink after lunch.
But they just had their freaking arm pulled on giving people tests for free instead of having to, and some people have to do this. If you want like certain tests, you have to go to CVS or whatever, buy them for $20-$40 and then fill out paperwork to get reimbursed by your insurance company. Like if you actually want people to get tested, a ton of people probably most people are just not going to do that because it's annoying, you know? But finally they've come around on rapid tests being available, but it's still not where they said we would be by now, which is they promised a pandemic testing board like Roosevelt's War Production Board. It's how we produce tanks, planes, uniforms, and supplies in record time. It's how we can produce and distribute tens of millions of tests. And most of all, last but not least, what they wanted to do was establish a U.S. public health job score to mobilize at least 100,000 Americans across the country with support from trusted local organizations and communities most at risk to perform culturally competent approaches to contract tracing and protecting at-risk populations. Not a bad idea.
I can't wait for that.
Yeah. It's like, I feel like if that to the extent that has happened, it's been through like nonprofits and NGOs. You know, they've probably gotten some like tax write-off to go through, you know, Harlem and set up like a little standee for a day. You know, it's not anything comprehensive. It's not anything that would get the economy freaking moving like we need to do on climate. Just make a core of, and I guess there's a little bit of funding for this, but not anywhere near what we need. If we really want to get out of this pandemic and, you know, fight the causes of the pandemic, you need a core of people and fight climate change too. You need public jobs, people who get paid to fix things to mitigate climate change. Can't go through the private sector. It's just going to loop us back into this fucking problem again. You need to take the profit incentive out of it. Of course, Biden will stop at nothing to insert that profit incentive back where it doesn't need to be, just for ideological reasons.
Yeah, I forgot that they were looking at like Roosevelt World War II shit back when this was being treated like an existential threat. You know, I just watched that movie Zoot Suit, and I didn't know this about the Zoot Suit riots, but you remember remember they were like beating up young Latin kids who were wearing zoot suits in the 40s. You know why they said that they were so mad at them? Obviously it's just racism, but their excuse was, this is a historical anecdote I'm pulling out of my ass just because I remembered it on this podcast. They'd wear the big suits and they would say, there's a war effort going on and we need all this linen for our boys across the and you guys are wearing these huge suits, so I'm going to kick your ass. Here's what I'm saying, right? If we want to stick it to the man, we should start wearing like tons of Q-tips and be like, fuck you. I made a whole suit out of COVID tests and I'm going to dance around in it to this saxophone. And that's how we'll stick it to Joe Biden.
I'm surprised.
That's what this whole campaign's been about.
I'm actually surprised some annoying like TikTok star kid hasn't done that already. Just made a suit out of COVID tests and got on the subway and just like gotten everyone annoyed at him.
That'd be cool. Yeah. You just
probably gonna
like,
happen.
Made out of those weird, you know how when it's done, it looks like a lollipop? Just a whole bunch of those hanging off your body.
Oh, yeah.
That'd be cool.
Human test. They should train people and or dogs to smell COVID and test that way. That's probably what we're gonna, if there's a shortage, that's what they're gonna, run down to.
Yeah, I mean, COVID's whole thing is that you can't smell it.
Oh, really?
Well,
as long as the dogs don't get COVID.
Yeah.
Can they?
Dogs can get COVID, and they smell like in 3D. So it must really suck to be a dog and get COVID.
Right.
Smell anything?
Like smelling stuff. It's like smelling a wall to a dog is like watching a movie for us.
It's pretty much the same as watching a movie.
Yeah.
The dog is just like smelling its own ass, and it's like, what? It's gone. No.
Yeah, that's what happened when Dog Sopranos, the series finale, they were just hitting the wall like, what? Come on. That's it?
So sad.
They get all jaded after they've smelled too many walls, being like, man, this wall is very reductive.
Yeah.
Doesn't have any of the complexities of the walls that were coming out when I was a pup.
I just feel like this wall is a really poor metaphor for this other wall.
Yeah, also, like, walls aren't going to fix climate change. Don't make a wall about climate change. We need direct action.
Make a wall. Make a law.
We need to fill the wall between us and the problem.
What if we made a wall that was made out of like carbon capture materials? That was just because that's what the only way I've heard carbon capture would actually work is if you just took Greenland and evacuated it and just turned it into a giant carbon capture fucking device.
So cool if we just turned one country into a trash can.
I'm for it.
Yeah.
Well,
There's no getting off of this train, Jack. We're going to Trashville. What are we talking about today?
Was that Final? Is this Final Fantasy again too?
Yeah, I turned the music back on.
Okay.
We should segue into.
And is this also the young woman who was, having intercourse?
yes. She's exploring her body.
All right.
In a healthy way.
We are going to be talking about a bunch of stuff, political things in nature with a guy who knows a lot about it. So let's kick it over to that interview.
Yes, we can.
All right. We are now joined by American Prospect executive editor, not editor-in-chief, executive editor, David Dayen. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah. And we are speaking now on the heels of the 1-year anniversary of the big J20, Biden taking office, taking power, which is, I don't know why it's 100 days and then 1 year seem to be the reflection points.
Nothing happens in between those two timelines.
It's like New York and LA, really, of presidential politics.
There's a great middle in between that nobody pays attention to. They just check in every several months.
Right. I'll see how he's doing on election night 2024 if he's alive. But
I think it's going to be really good.
It'll be entertaining no matter what.
January 6th will be more entertaining. January 6th, 25. That's the place to be.
They could just march Trump in with a big battalion of militia guys in order to be legal. If he wins, then that's probably how he's going to do his parade, his inauguration parade.
Definitely
he loves parades.
There will definitely be a President Camacho from Idiocracy aspect to it, I'd say.
Camacho was too cool. He actually ruled.
Well, I just saw a quote from the president, Biden, who said he was actually surprised by the level of Republican intransigence to his agenda. If you remember, he was actually saying during the campaign, post-Obama administration, current Trump administration, when he was saying this, that he thought the Republicans would have an epiphany and they would come rolling back and it would be like the 90s all over again and they would pass all this bipartisan stuff. What accounts for this man's askew view of the way the world works? Is it age? Is it his career trajectory? What's going on there?
I was just as stunned as him until I learned this fun fact that Joe Biden was in Washington for all 8 years of the Obama presidency. He was actually in a pretty good position to witness it, being the second in command and seeing the intransigence play out in that administration very directly and very, very obviously. Did he think that he was somehow any different? Did he think that it was because of who Obama was or what he looked like, that there was going to be a difference and that Joe Biden, old Scranton Joe, would be able to change things up. Obviously, that wasn't the case, and that was extreme hubris to think that there would be any way for Joe Biden to become a bipartisan deal maker that Republicans would respect. Now, he got the infrastructure bill passed, and I suppose if you want to call that a bipartisan win, you can. There really hasn't been much else of substance. I mean, it's kind of in if you look at the last couple presidencies, you had essentially one piece of legislation in the first year of the Trump presidency that was in any way substantial, and that was the tax cuts. You've had two in this presidency, the American Rescue Plan, which, like the tax cuts, was a 50 vote reconciliation bill, and the infrastructure bill, which was designed entirely to stave off a larger bill known as Build Back Better, to split them apart and get the centrist Democrats on board to say they have done something so that they could reject the rest of the agenda. That was an explicit plan by McConnell and the Republicans, and it worked. It worked really, really well. So to expect anything else, and also, let's be clear, Joe Biden could have had the same exact level of opposition on the Republican side and still had a successful presidency. It really comes down to Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema. Those are who are blocking key elements of the agenda at the moment, not the Republicans. And so even the whole premise is a little bit flawed.
I was told a lot of the equation was about Delaware grit and who has it.
All right.
So this is a surprise to me.
I mean,
down the mud.
You mix in some Scranton Joe-ism, and that should be a recipe for success. But how much of this do you think really is about his, political muscle memory? Because this is an old guy who, let's say for the sake of argument, is well-intentioned now, not where we are politically, but wants to do a couple good things, do the good things in his platform. But he just has no experience, maybe in the early 70s when he very first came into the Senate, but since then has really no experience going up against the right wing of the Democratic Party, which is who he's had to tussle with here. Would a better Joe Biden have prevailed here, or is this no hope of getting good legislation through as long as those two are in the way?
I mean, it wasn't that long ago that Biden was on the right wing of the Democratic Party, right?
Right.
And he was able to make deals from that center position. He made the calculation that the center had shifted in the Democratic Party, which, he has 48 out of 50 Senate votes for an agenda that is certainly more expansive than anything any Democrat has done in the last 50 years. I think we can say that. So at some level, he calculated correctly. What he miscalculated was the fact that Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema are pretty immovable. And I think the larger miscalculation was to fail to set expectations and priorities for what could be done. And he did this both on the upside and on the downside. So let me try to explain. So legislatively, he appears to have overpromised. He thought he could get a $2 trillion plus $3 trillion bill through while figuring out a way to mollify the center left of the party. And it probably would have been more appropriate to split this bill into some component parts, maybe pass something in 22 and pass something later this year for the fiscal year 2023 reconciliation. Do it in stages, get what you can. But the virtue of Build Back Better was also its failure, which is that it had a bunch of stuff put in it, which got everybody on board with it. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, that meant that when it came time to cut things, nobody wanted to cut their thing. So it made it impossible to come up with a compromise. And that's what we're faced with right now. On the side of executive action, which is certainly as much, if not more, a part of the presidency. I mean, if you look at the Constitution, it says that presidents take care that the laws are faithfully executed. That's their job. Congress makes the laws, presidents execute the laws. So on that side, he has really underpromised, right? So overpromise on the legislative, underpromise on the executive, because there are a host of things that he had in his power to do, and he's done some of them, but certainly not to the degree that would have made tangible differences for the American people that they could actually see. And in some cases, he's kind of changed his policy. We've seen this week. So, about a month and a half ago, Jen Psaki gets on the podium and says, what do you want us to do? Send COVID tests to every American? And then we did exactly that. We're in the midst of doing it in a really simple way. You just type your name into the Postal Service and your address, and they give it to you. And so, it took a while to get to that point, probably too long, because it would have been better to have done that before the Omicron surge than after. But at the same time, there's a sense that there is that possibility. And the tragedy of it is that it comes a bit too late. But I think that it shows that the capacity is there, and the challenge for the next 3 years are, can Biden be a quick learner? Okay, my legislative agenda is in real trouble, and the midterms are probably not going to be very kind to me, and so I may be tapped out legislatively unless I find some bipartisan bills that I can make progress on. So, I have this other set of possibilities. I have this executive action agenda, a day one agenda, as we labeled it in the prospect in 2019, that could be used to really make some positive changes, whether it's lowering prescription drug prices or canceling student debt or effectively legalizing marijuana. All of those things are possible, and much, much more. And we have a website that tracks all of this stuff. It's at prospect.org/EAT. That stands for the Executive Action Tracker. So prospect.org/EAT. You go there, you can see all of the 77 discrete items that we saw where Biden can take executive action. Links to all the stories that we wrote about those particular policies, and whether or not he's accomplished.
Yum, yum, yum. Well, some of those actions that I've heard you talk about this are go in regard to environmental regulation and coal regulation.
Sure.
And Manchin, of course, comes from a coal state. Biden has tried to appease him by doing all sorts of things and wait on him hand and feet. That hasn't worked. I don't think primarying him is really going to work in West Virginia, or maybe running against him as a Republican. I think the left should consider. But one thing you suggested is actually using the arm of the state to regulate coal to death, or at least threaten to, in West Virginia until he comes along. Do you think there's any hope in that?
I mean, it's an option. It's an option that hasn't been tried. Is that if you have this agenda on Build Back Better, and you think it's really important, and it's being stymied by essentially one person, well, you got to find the pressure points for that one person. And it is certainly the case, at least under current law. Now, maybe the Supreme Court changes this at some point, but under current Supreme Court jurisprudence, the EPA has the ability in EPA versus Massachusetts to, impose penalties under the Clean Air Act that limit the emissions of greenhouse gases. And you can do that in such a way that would make it very difficult for the coal industry to survive. Is Biden going to do that? I mean, let's look at his record. In the first year, there's been more oil and gas drilling permits allowed on federal land than even in the Trump administration, right? There have been some positive steps on climate. There also have been some backsliding on climate. And more to the point, it doesn't seem like in these negotiations, he has used the threat of executive action as a spur to get to what he wants. So he could have done this on drug prices too, right? There's a drug price piece to the Build Back Better Act. He could have said, look, you're either going to pass this legislation that you have that will lower the cost of prescription drugs, or I'm going to seize people's patents, which I have the ability to do, and make sure that the patent holder distributes these drugs in an affordable way. But that kind of use of leverage to achieve a legislative result, even by just taking executive action and kicking Joe Manchin off the front page. Because I mean, I think what Joe Manchin thrives on is having a lot of people around him and being the center of attention. And so if you're taking action on your own, like this week, we're hearing a lot about the COVID test, for example. If you're taking action on your own, finally, you're on the front page on your terms rather than being, having Joe Manchin be the essential signpost of the Democratic Party. I mean, we haven't heard the Democratic agenda articulated by anyone so much as Joe Manchin over the first year of this presidency. And you wonder why the Democrats are having failing approval ratings, because literally their spokesman, their avatar is Joe Manchin, and his agenda is very particular and not something that the public favors.
Yeah, and not that popular even in places like West Virginia. But I'm curious what you make of the explanation for why Build Back Better failed or has failed so far, why the two-track strategy didn't go through, which is, originally it was, and this was Biden's strategy, the Progressive Caucus's strategy. We're not going to pass the bipartisan infrastructure bill without also passing Build Back Better through reconciliation with just Democratic votes. And they folded. I think that goes back to Biden's political history. This is just not a position he's used to being in. But Pramila Jayapal, chair of the Progressive Caucus, her explanation for why they folded was that she didn't believe Biden or Manchin was going to support anything. He didn't actually want to do the bipartisan infrastructure bill. So by voting for it, letting it through the House, actually taking that vote, that tied his hands. So he had to vote for that bipartisan bill. He really didn't want anything. Do you buy that, or do you think that's just an excuse?
Well, I mean, I could see it both ways. I mean, it is hard to listen to Joe Manchin over the course of the last year and think that there was any chance of him passing an agenda that would be in any way expansive or positive for people. I mean, he has come up with one excuse after another. If it wasn't inflation, it was the fact that he needed work requirements, or it was the fact that he didn't want electric car companies to benefit if they were union, they had union membership. I mean, there's been one thing after the other. He signed a document in July that Chuck Schumer put out that had a bunch of bullet points on it, and almost all of those were fulfilled in Build Back Better, and he still had problems with Build Back Better. So, what does it take to actually please this guy? I mean, he is kind of like, it's like nailing Jello to a wall. He's a moving target. So I do agree with that to an extent. But if you come up with this idea that we're going to use this one piece of leverage that we might have, then you got to move forward and follow through and use the leverage. I mean, just to say, well, that wouldn't work, nothing would work. Well, then why are you passing it? I mean, there doesn't seem to have been a plan B in Pramila Jayapal's mind other than trust Joe Biden. And obviously, Joe Biden didn't have the capacity to make the promise that he made about Manchin being willing to vote for the bill. So I think it was a tactical error on the part of the Progressive Caucus and on the part of Jayapal to not hold out. And it may not have worked. We may have gotten nothing out of that. You can question what the virtue of the infrastructure bill is, which has a lot of fossil fuel infrastructure in it. You can question whether that's a positive step at all, actually, in some sense. I mean, I think there's some good stuff in it, but I think you got to follow through with the strategy. Assume that you can get that infrastructure bill at a later date, and let's just keep it going and see, play this out until its conclusion. Instead, they went ahead and passed the infrastructure bill, and within a month, Manchin was saying, "I can't support Build Back Better." I mean, there is a linkage there.
Yeah. I'm also curious. I'm excited about this idea in West Virginia. Do you think someone from the left should challenge him as a Republican? Do you think that would work?
I mean, anything's possible, I guess. There was a candidate by the name of Stephen Smith who ran for governor of West Virginia. He ended up running as a Democrat, but he was strongly thinking of running as an independent, and basically as an independent populist. And he had a very sort of big organizing strategy. He ended up not winning the Democratic primary because essentially Manchin forces, the Manchin machine, circled the wagons, and they put up some guy who ended up losing in 2022, Jim Justice. So maybe not running as a Republican, but maybe running in a sort of an independent, free from both parties in sort of a populist capacity. I don't know that West Virginia is there yet. This is a state that went for Donald Trump by 50 points. Yeah. To say that how exactly that Democrat running as a Republican would get nominated is a question you'd have to answer for me. But as a populist that says what the real problem in West Virginia has been the old money boys who have robbed the people of the state, extracted its resources, impoverished them. And what we're going to do, not through one party or the other, is try to end that practice. Maybe that works. I don't know.
Yeah, it just seems I have some limited experience volunteering in West Virginia, and for so many people there, as soon as you say Democrat, it's a non-starter, which is
absolutely
a shame because Dukakis won West Virginia in '88. Like, it's not that long ago that it was a solid Democratic state. But back to Manchin and Sinema. Manchin seems pretty easy to read, right? He is corrupt. He's in Cole's pocket, right? But Sinema has been a bit more of an enigma. We did do a sort of a deep dive into her a few months ago, and there seems to be somewhat of an internally consistent logic in that she believes that for legislation to be durable, politically durable, it has to be bipartisan. Even if that's 1-2 Republicans, as long as it has a couple, then that means it's good to go. But in reality, that just means it's going to be worse.
I mean, in her lifetime, the Affordable Care Act passed with no Republican support.
Right.
And despite changes in government, despite changes in party in the White House, in Congress, it still exists today. And it seems destined to keep on existing since, in the last few years of the Trump presidency, they made no effort to try to change it. I think that it's a bizarre notion that the only legislation that must survive is legislation that has sort of the not just the backing, but the tacit go ahead of the party that didn't win the election. I mean, go to any other country and look at their parliamentary system, and it's no accident when we invade countries and install governments, we don't install this system. We install parliamentary system because it is more durable as a system, and that is one where you have essentially a party win power, whether it's a coalition government or a straight party government, and then implement their agenda with no help from the opposition. Only here is bipartisanship seen as this great virtue.
Right. And I think and I've heard you say this as well, that if you are thinking of political durability, then you need to do things that actually improve the quality of life of the people whose votes you want. Has there really been anything in the past year or anything you foresee before the 2022 midterms that will do that to an effective rate?
I think the competition agenda that's being put forward by Lena Khan at the Federal Trade Commission and Jonathan Cantor as the Department of Justice head of antitrust has the potential to be pretty groundbreaking and pretty important. This week, they announced a change to the merger guidelines, which kind of govern whether or not they will intervene if a merger takes place. These guidelines that were essentially decimated 40 years ago by a group of thinkers led by Robert Bork, who decided that the only thing that you have to care about with merger policy is consumer welfare, which is essentially whether prices lower. It was a perfectly circular theory because Bork said that the only thing you have to care about is efficiency, and all mergers are efficient. So it's like this perfectly circular argument that he made, but it has governed not only the antitrust enforcement agencies, but the courts over the last 40 years, and has created a situation where we have this massive concentration in virtually every aspect of our economic lives. And we're seeing actually it play out right now with the inflation statistics. We're seeing these very concentrated companies in the logistics space charge premium prices because of supply shocks and take advantage of the shortages to create huge profit windfalls for themselves. I always talk about the ocean shipping companies, the companies with the big container ships. There are 3 alliances, they call themselves. Basically, companies in the alliance say, okay, you take this ship and I take this ship. It doesn't matter who they hired. One of the alliances is called the Alliance, even though there are 2 others. I don't know what that means. But these alliances made more money in 2021 than in the years 2010 to 2020 combined. And what that is pricing power. And they took advantage of desperate importers and exporters to just jack up rates. And that's why, in large measure, why we're seeing the inflation that we're seeing right now. So, and it's not just that. There's a lot of other factors. And we have a special issue coming out about all of this, but I won't bore you with all of it. But I will ask you to read it in a little bit. Yeah. But anyway, point being, I think Kahn and Cantor have a very different perspective. And they're very systematically and deliberately trying to change the philosophy around economic concentration in America. And they've already had some wins. One example I point out is the Federal Trade Commission voted unanimously to go after and protect the right to repair. So this is the thing where if you have an Apple iPhone or you have some other gaming device, you can't fix it yourself because you have to unlock it. And it's proprietary. And so you have to go to an Apple certified manufacturer to actually get it fixed. So they said, no, that's not right. If you own the product, you should be able to repair it or unlock it or do whatever you need to do with it. And after that announcement, and it wasn't a change in law, it was just saying, we're going to actually enforce this. Microsoft and Apple came out and said, yes, customers can repair their own equipment. And so that's like a signal that is given to these businesses like, yeah, the terms have changed, that regulators are going to look at these things much more skeptically. You're not going to be able to jack up profits. I mean, when you have that right to, when you break that right to repair and you have the system in place where it's proprietary, yeah, you have to go to a certified repair technician who charges you a premium rate, right? Rather than you having to fix it yourself. So that's just a price situation. So that's a start, and there have been some lawsuits. They've filed to block mergers. I wonder, and I think they actually will try to block the Microsoft Activision merger that we heard about yesterday. So I think there's a lot of promising work being done there that will have a long-lasting impact. Are there other things that could be done that need to have a long-lasting impact? Yes. I mean, we're sitting here in the first month since the enhanced child tax credit, which used to go out monthly to people for each child, expired. And we're back in the regime of a smaller child tax credit that you only get at tax time because you only need money in April, right? Yeah, there are a lot of missed opportunities, mistakes, things that certainly could have been done better. And it's difficult to see where this footing will be regained by the Biden administration, given the missteps of the first year.
I think if he were to make it illegal for Apple to only use their headphone jacks, so like it's the
that's a classic thing. It's planned obsolescence, and
Yeah.
they change it every couple of years. Like they change the chargers on your laptops or whatever, so that if the one breaks, you have to go get a new one rather than use the one you've been using all along in your previous MacBook that every 3 years seems to spiral down on the battery. We managed to do all these other things that are wondrous in technology, but the battery in a MacBook can't last more than 2 or 3 years.
Not to mention they intentionally break the old products. Like old iPhones, they software update in ways where the old machinery can't handle it. And your phone you got 18 months ago is now just a rock you own that cost $1,000. There's no way around it.
Absolutely. And
I got an iPhone that was like cheaper than the other one or whatever, basically was the deal. They were like, do you want the bad one for less money that's going to make you mad?
The bad
it has
Apple
this thing
deal.
where and you can't turn off 3D click on it. And so I'm just constantly like doing this thing where you accidentally airdrop a photo to everyone
God.
around you could be of anything, because you can't turn off this feature. Can Joe Biden stop that? Can he stop the thing on my
all of these
PlayStation?
petty scams are, it's serious business, and it's what the Federal Trade Commission was invented to stop. I'll give you another example. You can do a gym membership at a place like 24 Hour Fitness online in about 10 seconds. Like, sign up, put your credit card information in, you're done. You cannot cancel a gym membership online. You have to go in person or send a certified letter. And you have to jump through a million different hoops to actually cancel the membership, even though it took 10 seconds to start the membership. So one thing that Lena Khan did at the FTC is say, if you can sign up in 10 seconds, you have to be able to cancel in 10 seconds. And she's enforcing that and with real penalties. So those things are really, they matter. Like the crapification of stuff in modern economic society matters, and we can actually do something about that.
Yeah, but I had to hire a lawyer to cancel my Planet Fitness subscription a few years ago. No, but it felt like
practically.
With
you specifically, it's important to ask.
But another thing, you mentioned supply chains, and there's an article in the Prospect that was really interesting about Pete Buttigieg and the authority he has to really mitigate the supply chain crisis, because, as you said, it's a price gouging crisis. It's not that there's not enough supplies. It's not that people are asking for too much money and that's causing inflation. People are gouging prices. The shipping industry is gouging prices. Is there a lot of that authority in other departments of the executive branch that could seriously make a dent in this stuff?
There's less authority than there needs to be, and there needs to be some changes made. Some of those are going forward, and some of those require some legislative action. Mm-hmm. So re-regulating the ocean shipping companies I mentioned before, there's a bill that passed the House with 364 votes. You don't see that very often, called the Ocean Shipping Reform Act, that actually would crack down and re-regulate these companies so that they have to deliver prices on reasonable terms. And it would give more teeth to the Federal Maritime Commission, which used to be the main regulator, but was completely defanged under the Clinton administration, actually. As far as trucking, which is another big bottleneck because the trucking jobs are terrible. Yeah. Buttigieg, the plan that he put out was like getting more teenagers on the road to be truckers, like increasing commercial driver's license. That's not the problem. We give out about 400,000 commercial driver's licenses a year. The problem is it's a bad job and nobody wants to do it. And so another part of the federal government, the National Labor Relations Board, is trying to look at changing the whole concept of misclassification. This is when a worker is classified as an independent contractor instead of an actual employee. Even when they're doing the job of an employee, they worked directly for one company. They clearly are taking their tasks and duties from that company, but they're classified as an independent contractor, so they don't have to pay good benefits or an hourly wage. And so we could see changes around that at the NLRB, which would be huge. Just today, it was announced that the port truckers at the Port of LA are trying to unionize, which is another huge effort that would go very far. So the answer is that a lot of these systems were deregulated in previous administrations. Carter deregulated rail, deregulated trucking. Clinton deregulated
airlines too, right?
And airlines. Clinton deregulated shipping. So we need some re-regulation in those spaces, and some of that would need congressional approval, but some of it wouldn't. And there are things that the administration can do to ensure that our supply chains are more resilient, that we're not making everything in China and relying on 3 ocean shipping alliances to get everything here. I mean, and that we're not engaging in this lean inventory process, this just-in-time logistics system that makes sure that there are no inventories not making money for you, that everything's produced, brought directly to a retail store, and then brought to your doorstep. We don't have to have that kind of production. It's dangerous. This is what we've seen in the pandemic. It's actually dangerous. And so some of that will require investment, like in reshoring, like building semiconductor facilities, for example, in the United States. Some of that will require just really paying attention to what corporate America is doing and making sure we have smart regulations.
Yeah, a huge toll on climate change, having things, shipped all over the place, the parts in 5 different continents, and they're assembled in Antarctica or whatever.
It's not just that, but it's that, typically what the reason these things are offshore to begin with is that they're looking for the lowest labor costs and also the lowest environmental regulations. So that's why they go to China or Vietnam or wherever is they want to be able to pollute.
Well, I have one more question that I think will probably make the listeners very angry with me or perhaps depressed, but this is a world my brain spends slightly too much time in, but I do want to ask, if we were talking 1 year since President Bernie Sanders took office, what kind of things do you think we would be discussing? What kind of accomplishments, assassination attempts, et cetera? What do you think we would be looking at?
An army of CEOs descending upon Washington. I mean, I think that to answer that question properly, you have to tell me how many senators Democrats have, right, and how many House members. Like, are we talking about the same system where?
Let's say it's the same, for the sake of.
If it's the same, I don't know that there's a lot of difference that could be made legislatively, maybe on the margins. In the other duties of the job, there could absolutely have been a lot more aggression taken, both whether you're talking about in labor or I think there have been a lot of more changes to the immigration system where Biden has done somewhat of the status quo. I think certainly the environmental aspect, I think Sanders would have paid a lot more attention to that. I mean, I'm not sure that, I mean, certainly Bernie Sanders was a full partner with Joe Biden in terms of passing Build Back Better. It's his bill. It comes out of the Budget Committee. He might have heel turned away from Manchin a lot quicker. I mean, I don't know that he would have let it last this long. Maybe sometime in the summer he would have said, take a vote, and if it didn't work, all right, moving on. We're doing something else. I don't think that Sanders would have had the infinite patience that Joe Biden seems to have had. But at the same time, I do think there would have been a difference in terms of the government posture in its agencies and things like that.
Yeah, and especially in foreign policy too. I think
Yeah, although I mean, we do have to talk about the fact that Joe Biden left Afghanistan. I mean,
Right.
some people think he didn't leave it, in a nice enough way. I mean, I'm happy we're not spending $300 million today in Afghanistan or $300 million yesterday to get the exact same result that we have right now, since we were powerless to really do anything in that country to affect the trajectory. So that was a fairly gutsy move. It certainly raised the ire of the establishment in Washington and was sort of the beginning of Biden's fall in approval ratings. But I think history, I think, will bear it out as the right choice.
Yeah. So we got one good thing. There we go.
There you go.
We can hang
like
our
to
hats
leave on
that.
a positive note.
Yeah. Well, David Dayen, thanks so much for joining us. And where can our listeners find you?
Yeah, so prospect.org, that's our website, the American Prospect. We do daily reporting on policy and politics, ideas, politics, and power. And I'm on Twitter often at DDayen, DDAYEN.
All right, check them out. Thanks again.
All right, thanks.
What about us? What do we have in this wonderful world of ours going on this week?
We're doing plugs. So what's up?
Yeah, that's what's
I believe
up.
so. At Anders Lee here on Twitter.com, or you can use the app. Either way, doesn't matter to me. Instagram as well. I have an account on that at Dursley1. And last but not Anders least, check out Redacted Tonight, my other JOB on Russia Today on the cable network and on YouTube and portable.tv.
Wow. What about me? You can follow me on Twitter at Patak Test Kitchen, your number one stop for exciting new flavors. And last but not Anders least, Theater of Delights Season 4 is still being kickstarted until the end of the month. We are almost halfway there. We've got around 10 days left. We need to finish strong. You too can earn a fourth exciting season of today's top audio stories, and that's on Kickstarter. It is pinned on my Twitter. I'll see you there.
I have upcoming show online on a venue called Rush Ticks, a virtual comedy club, which I'll be writing a bunch of new material for. It's gonna happen on February 24th at 9 p.m. I'll put ticket links up everywhere and stuff if you're on anywhere and you want to watch some new material of mine. Anders, most of all, my live show went really well last night, and it'll probably happen again in Brooklyn. If you're in Brooklyn, keep an eye out for that. All my shows will be on my pinned tweet, and I'm at Feral Jokes on the internet and on all things. I think that's it. And listen to Why You Mad, my other show.
In all things.
And sign up for our Patreon.
Yes.
And we have merch for sale. And leave a iTunes positive
Anders, leave
review.
a iTunes positive review.
Yeah. And attack that like button.
Don't hit the Patak button on patreon.com, sending you back to Google when you were there. Instead, hit the subscribe button to our channel.
I don't know Patreon up Patak.
Turn the full resolution up on your monitor so that you can subscribe to us on all the things and see it clearly when you're doing it.
It's finished.
Yes.